Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world one book at a time.
It's great to be back.
So, today we are doing something that feels a little different, a little risky even.
I think so, yeah.
Usually, when we talk about systems on this show, we're looking outward. We're dissecting corporate ladders, political machines.
Economic incentives, right? The big external structures that sort of push us around.
Exactly. The stuff you can see on the news, the stuff you can, draw on a whiteboard.
The architecture of the environment.
Go.
The invisible hand of the market. Or the very visible hand of the state.
But today, we're flipping that camera around 180 degrees. We are looking at the internal system, the operating system running in your head right this second. We're talking about the architecture of consciousness itself, and specifically this feedback loop that creates the feeling that there is a you inside your head, a pilot.
And this is, you could argue, the most fundamental system of all. I mean, every other system we ever discuss on here, politics, culture, economics, it's all filtered through this internal processor.
Right.
And if that interface is glitchy, or if the software is just designed to produce anxiety as a default output, then it almost doesn't matter how good your external life is.
Yeah, that's a terrifying thought.
You could be a billionaire in a palace, but if that internal system is just running a misery script, well, the user experience is going to be suffering. Pure and simple.
Okay, so to map this out, this internal territory, we're doing a deep dive into Waking Up, A Guide to Spirituality Without Religion by Sam Harris. And I think we need to put a flag in the ground right here before anyone sees that word spirituality and, runs for the hills.
Or sees the name Sam Harris and just braces for a debate about religion or free will.
Exactly. We should probably set some ground rules here, a mission statement for this deep dive.
Yes, absolutely. First, this is not a book review. We're not here to give it a star rating.
And it is definitely not a religious discussion, at least not in the way you might think. We are not here to debate deities or metaphysics or anything like that.
No, we're here to analyze the software of subjectivity. We're treating the mind like a system, just like any other system.
So the inquiry today it's pretty radical, actually. We're asking, how does the brain construct the illusion of a central operator?
The pilot in the cockpit.
The pilot in the cockpit. I mean, we all feel that, right? I certainly do. I feel like I'm right here, behind my eyes, looking out. I'm driving this meat suit.
Of course, it feels self-evident.
But what if that's just a user interface trick? And maybe more importantly, what happens when that very system, that feeling of I, is what generates suffering as a standard feature, not a bug?
That's the core question of the whole book. We're looking at the mechanics of what Harris calls the neurotic trance.
The neurotic trance, I like that.
We want to map how that loop works, why it might have evolved, and what tools, if any, exist to break it.
Okay, so let's unpack this. And I think we have to start with the author, because Sam Harris he's a very unique bridge in this space. And for some people, let's be honest, he's a pretty polarizing figure.
He really is. And you have this tension right out of the gate. On the one hand, he's a neuroscientist. He has a PhD from UCLA. He studied the physical brain, the wetware.
He knows the science.
He knows the science. But on the other hand, he's a philosopher and, maybe most famously, a very, very vocal skeptic of religion.
Right. He wrote The End of Faith. He was one of the four horsemen of New Atheism, along with Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett.
That's the crew.
So when a guy like that, a guy who spent most of the early 2000s debating priests and rabbis on stage, writes a book called Waking Up and puts spirituality right there in the subtitle, it turns some heads. It feels, off-brand. It's like seeing a manual on how to pray written by Richard Dawkins.
It seems like a massive contradiction. But that's actually the key to the whole system insight he's presenting.
Yeah.
Harris is basically arguing that as a culture, we have thrown the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay.
He uses this really potent metaphor to explain it. He calls it the diamond in the dunghill.
Let's break that down, because it's a very evocative image.
It is. So the dunghill, in Harris's view, is all of religious dogma. It's the superstition, the sectarian violence, the scientifically unprovable claims about virgin births or winged horses or, multi-armed deities.
All the stuff that a skeptic and a scientist would and should reject.
Exactly. He says that's all intellectual waste. It's indefensible in the 21st century. But, and this is the big but, He argues that if you're willing to dig through all that waste, there is a diamond.
And the diamond is not faith in the traditional
Oh,
sense.
absolutely not. The diamond is the contemplative insight. It's the actual replicable subjective experience of self-transcendence.
The experience of what it's like to break the illusion of being a separate self.
Precisely. He argues that for thousands of years, the only people doing serious first-person research into the software of the mind were monks, mystics, yogis,
The contemplatives.
the contemplatives.
Yeah.
And they found something real. That's the diamond. But because of the time they lived in, they wrapped it in layers and layers of mythology. That's the dunghill.
So his whole project is to try and rescue that diamond, to extract it.
To extract it and put it in a modern, secular, scientific framework. He's basically acknowledging a huge gap in the market, if you want to think of it that way.
A gap in the market of ideas.
Yeah. On one side, you have science and secularism, which are brilliant at explaining the outside world, building bridges, curing diseases. But they often totally ignore the quality of what it feels like to be alive.
Right. They treat the mind like a black box or a computer that just processes data without any concern for the user experience.
And then on the other side, you have religion, which claims a total monopoly on our inner lives, on meaning, on transcendence. But it wraps it all in what he would call bad pre-scientific explanations.
And you can see that people are hungry for this middle ground. The source notes that something like 20% of Americans now identify as spiritual but not religious.
That's a huge demographic.
Yeah.
That's 1 in 5 people who are effectively saying, look, I reject the institution, the dogma, but I still feel there's something more to consciousness than just being a meat robot.
A meat robot. I definitely feel like that on a Monday morning. But this brings us right to the central thesis of the book, which it's really a system output analysis. Harris says the feeling of I, the feeling that I am a thinker behind my thoughts, that I am a writer in my head, is an illusion.
And crucially, it's not just a harmless illusion. It is a cognitive system output that by its very nature generates suffering.
Okay, hold on. Let's pause there because I have to push back a bit immediately. It sounds very, poetic and philosophical to say the self is an illusion. But practically speaking, I am here, I pay my taxes. If I stub my toe, I feel the pain, I remember my childhood. If that's not a self, what are we even talking about?
That is the most common and the most important objection. It's a completely valid one.
Is Harris just saying, I don't exist, that I'm a zombie?
No, that's the misunderstanding. He's not saying the experience isn't happening. He isn't saying your memories aren't real or the pain isn't real. He's saying the thing you think is having the experience doesn't exist as a separate entity.
Okay, can you distinguish those for me? I'm not sure I get the difference.
Okay, think of a whirlpool in a river. Is the whirlpool real?
Yeah, of course. You can see it. If you fall into it, it will pull you down. It has real effects.
Exactly. You can measure it. You can photograph it. It exerts a force.
Yeah.
But is the whirlpool a solid object that is separate from the water?
No.
Can you reach in, pull out just the whirlpool, and put it in a bucket while leaving all the water behind?
No, of course not. It's a pattern of flow. It's what the water is doing in that spot.
That is the thesis. You are a pattern of flow. You are a process, not an entity. But the user interface of the human brain tricks you into thinking you are a solid rock sitting in the middle of the river watching the water of your thoughts and feelings go by.
The user interface. I like that. So let's talk about this user interface glitch, because I think if most people listening right now just check in with themselves, they feel like they are in here.
Usually somewhere behind the eyes.
Yeah, right behind the eyes, looking out there at the world. It feels like a movie theater.
Harris calls this the writer illusion. We feel like we're a passenger, or maybe a pilot, riding around inside the skull. He even uses this image of a minotaur in the labyrinth. We feel like a discrete entity trapped inside the maze of the brain.
But if you talk to a neuroscientist, which again Harris is, what do they actually find when they open up the hood? If they put me in an fMRI scanner while I'm thinking I am hungry, do they find a little eye center that lights up? Is there a guy pulling a label hunger?
They find no minotaur. There is no center. There is no homunculus. No little man sitting in a control room watching the movie of your life on a screen.
So what do they find?
A massively parallel distributed system. It's a disparate set of processes all running at once. You have visual processing in the occipital lobe at the back, auditory processing in the temporal lobes, emotional regulation in the amygdala, long-term planning in the frontal cortex. And it's all happening at the same time.
So the self is like a piece of software, an interface that just pulls all that data together and presents it as a unified single story.
Yes. It's a binding trick. It's an elegant solution to a data problem. The brain needs a way to verify that the hand it sees grabbing the apple belongs to the same organism that is feeling the hunger for the apple. So it creates a tag. Me. Mine.
But we mistake the tag for the actual object. We mistake the map for the territory.
Exactly. And this is what leads directly to what he calls the neurotic trance. Because we are so deeply identified with that narrator, that voice in our head, we are constantly lost in thought. We don't realize we are thinking. We just think we are experiencing direct reality.
What's the difference? Thinking versus experiencing reality.
It's the difference between being aware that you are thinking and just being in the thought. Most of the time, we are just in it. If you're angry at someone, you aren't objectively observing the sensation of anger arising in your body. You just are angry. The thought, he's such a jerk, feels like a perfect description of the world.
You are the anger. You're not the one watching the anger.
You've collapsed into the content of your mind. That's the trance.
There's a really great anecdote in the book that illustrates this perfectly. It's the wilderness trip. It's so funny because it's so relatable, even though the context is pretty extreme.
Ah, yes. 16-year-old Sam Harris having a very bad time.
So, picture this. He's 16. He goes on this sort of outward bound style wilderness program. It's in the mountains of Colorado. And the big final event is a solo.
Right. 3 days, all alone.
3 days, all alone by a beautiful alpine lake. And he's fasting. So no food, no distractions, no books, no music, no friends. Just him and his thoughts.
The premise of that system, the external system of the camp, is that if you place a person in a pristine, beautiful environment, the environment itself will shape their internal state for the better.
Exactly. The inputs are majestic mountains, silent starlight, clean air. So the expected output should be awe, peace, profound insight into the nature of reality.
And the actual output for teenage Harris.
Utter misery. Total grinding boredom. He said he didn't write deep philosophical insights in his journal. He literally wrote a list of all the food he was going to eat the second he got back.
Chuckles. I think he mentions cheeseburgers and milkshakes.
Cheeseburgers, chocolate milkshakes, pizza, all of it. His biological survival instinct just went into overdrive. He said his letters home for his parents to read later rivaled the soldiers at Gallipoli for their sheer self-pity.
He was just miserable.
Completely miserable. But here's the kicker. The older participants on the trip, the instructors, they loved it. They found it genuinely transformational. They came back from their solos just glowing.
And that's the crucial variable, isn't it? The external system, the lake, the mountains, the silence, was identical for everyone. The photons hitting their retinas were exactly the same.
But the internal system, the mind, was completely different. Harris realized later that because he had absolutely no control over his attention, he was just a hostage to the next thought that popped into his head.
And when you're 16, you're fasting, and your mind is totally untrained, the next thought is almost guaranteed to be about a cheeseburger, or about how bored you are.
It's a perfect example of how the internal system dictates your reality. If you can't break that stream of compulsive thought, you are just a victim of whatever your brain happens to throw at you next. You're trapped in the movie, and in his case, it was a very long, very boring movie about being hungry.
And you know, most of us are in that movie continuously. We just don't notice it because we have enough distractions, our phones, our jobs, other people, to drown out the constant low-level hum of boredom and anxiety.
But you take those distractions away, you put yourself in a quiet room, or by a remote lake.
And you come face to face with the chaos of the untrained mind. You see the neurotic trance in high definition.
So that trance is the default state. How do you alter the feedback loop? How do you even begin to do that? And Harris gives another example, a much more controversial one, from 1987. And this involves a substance that is definitely not a cheeseburger.
Right, the MDMA experience.
Yeah, he takes ecstasy with a close friend. And he describes the experience as a system crash, but in a profoundly good way.
And I think it's really important to analyze this mechanically, not just as a drug story. We're not advocating for anything here, but we are analyzing the system output that Harris reports. What actually happened in his subjective experience?
He said he felt a sense of boundless love, just an unconditional well-wishing for his friend. And he realized that if a total stranger had walked into the room at that moment, he would have felt the same love for them too. But, and this is the part that is so interesting, he said it wasn't a new feeling being added. It felt like the subtraction of something that was normally there.
That is the absolute key insight. It wasn't that the drug added a chemical labeled love to his brain. It was that the drug temporarily suppressed the brain structures responsible for self-concern, for defensiveness, for ego maintenance.
He uses this analogy of a noisy air conditioner in a room. It's been humming along so loudly for so long that you've tuned it out. You don't even hear it anymore. It's just the background noise of your life.
Right.
Then suddenly someone pulls the plug, and the silence that follows feels like this profound, blissful peace.
Exactly. The self system is the air conditioner. It's constantly humming in the background, assessing everything. Am I safe? Do they like me? Am I better than him? Does this make me look stupid? That hum consumes a massive amount of our cognitive and emotional energy.
He talks about envy, specifically from that experience. He realized that in that state, he couldn't feel envy. It was cognitively impossible. If his friend was smarter or better looking or more successful, Harris just felt pure joy for him.
Because the barrier, the self, that usually sets up the comparison of me versus you, was temporarily down.
It completely shifted the incentives of the system. In a normal state of consciousness, the system is designed for competition. I need to get ahead. I need to be better than you to survive and reproduce. And that creates envy as a natural output.
But when that self-barrier drops, the incentive changes completely. Helping you is helping me, because the distinction between us feels arbitrary. It's no longer a zero-sum game.
And he had this insight that love isn't a transaction. It's not, I love you because you do things for me. It's a state of being. It's like the signal is always broadcasting, but our own self-system is usually jamming the frequency with static.
Of course, the drug eventually wears off. The self-system reboots. The air conditioner turns back on. But the insight remains. It provides proof of concept. It proves that the self is a variable, not a constant. And if it can be turned down or removed, even chemically, it means it's not the fundamental you.
But our entire culture is built on stabilizing that illusion, right? We have these massive cultural narratives telling us to build the self up, not to see through it. We live in the age of the personal brand.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We call this the seeker trap. The dominant cultural narrative is that happiness is always a future reward. I will be happy
When I get the promotion, when I find the perfect partner, when I lose 10 pounds, when I get the bigger house.
It's the if-then logic of Western consumer capitalism. If I achieve X, then I will be granted the feeling of satisfaction.
But look at the system mechanics of that. That narrative keeps you perpetually out of the present moment. You are always leaning forward, trying to get to the next moment because this one isn't good enough yet.
You're treating the present moment as nothing more than an obstacle to get through on your way to a better future.
It's like running on a treadmill.
Yeah.
You're sweating, you're putting in the effort, you're moving your legs, but you never actually arrive at the destination called satisfaction. You just arrive at more treadmill.
And Harris uses a really beautiful analogy to explain the fundamental shift in perspective that's required to get off that treadmill. He calls it the mirror versus the window.
Oh, I like this one. This really helped me visualize what he's talking about.
So most of the time, for all of our lives, we are looking through the window. The window itself is consciousness. It's the clear glass. We look through it at the trees, the cars, the people, the objects of the world, the contents of our experience.
Right. Our focus is on the content, the stuff out there.
Right. Spirituality, in this very technical sense that Harris uses, is the simple act of shifting your focus so you see your own reflection on the window. You stop looking at the objects and you start looking at the medium itself. You become interested in the nature of consciousness.
But because we're so used to looking through the glass, we don't even know the glass is there. It's totally transparent to us.
Exactly. The illusion of the self is like a smudge on the glass that we mistake for a cloud in the sky. And so we spend our whole lives trying to fix the cloud, trying to change the world out there, when the smudge is actually on our own lens.
Okay, let's get granular and map this system out explicitly. If we were to draw a diagram of the mind, based on this book, what are the different components? What are the cognitive actors?
Okay, let's diagram it. First, you have consciousness itself. That's the space, the light, the screen. It's the context in which everything happens. It has no qualities of its own. It's
the window pane.
It's the window pane. Then second, you have the contents of consciousness. These are all the things that appear in that space. Thoughts, sensations, emotions, the itch on your nose, the sound of a car horn outside.
That's the movie playing on the screen, the stuff appearing outside the window.
Correct. The fundamental system failure, the glitch in the matrix, if you will, is that we confuse the movie for the screen. We mistake the contents for the context. We think we are the angry thought.
The difference between saying, I am angry, versus the feeling of anger is arising in awareness.
That's it. That linguistic difference points to a massive structural difference in perception. If you say, I am angry, you have identified with the cloud. If you say anger is arising, you are recognizing that you are the sky in which the cloud is passing.
And what about the incentives? Why does the system maintain this ego? Why would evolution build us this way if it makes us so miserable?
Because evolution doesn't give a damn if you're happy.
Right.
Evolution only cares if you pass on your genes. Nature is a ruthless pragmatist, not a therapist.
So all this anxiety and self-concern, it was good for survival.
It was fantastic for survival. If you're a hominid on the savannah and you hear a rustle in the tall grass, the one who thinks, I wonder if that's a lion that wants to eat me, is the one who survives.
Whereas the one who thinks, a transient appearance in consciousness, a rustling sound arising and passing away, just becomes lion food.
That guy gets eaten.
Yeah.
We are the direct descendants of the most paranoid, neurotic warriors. The chill people got weeded out of the gene pool.
We are the offspring of the champion warriors. That's a depressing thought.
It is. But it explains so much about the negative feedback loop that runs our lives in the modern world, where there are no lions in the grass.
Walk me through that loop.
Okay, step 1, trigger. A negative thought arises. It could be anything. My boss sent me a one-word email tomorrow.
The dreaded one-word email.
Right. Step 2, system response. Identification. The self system immediately grabs onto it and says, this is about me. I am in danger. My career is over. I'm going to be fired.
You identify with the thought. You believe it's true.
Step 3, rumination. You start rehearsing the future argument. You replay past mistakes. You simulate all the future disasters that could happen. You're just spinning the hamster wheel of negativity.
And step 4, the outcome. The emotion. That shot of cortisol and adrenaline, which should have lasted for about 90 seconds, now lasts for hours or days.
That's the key metric, isn't it? The duration.
Yeah.
The refractory period.
The refractory period. Explain that.
An emotion is just a chemical event in the body. It should flush through the system pretty quickly. If you watch a toddler, they can go from a full-blown screaming tantrum to laughing hysterically in 2 minutes. The refractory period is incredibly short.
But adults.
Adults, we can stay angry about something that happened 20 years ago. Why? Because the self-system keeps hitting the refresh button on the story. Remember what they did to me. The story keeps the chemical reaction going long after the initial trigger is gone.
So, the million-dollar question. What are the tools for system disruption? How do we stop hitting that refresh button? Harris talks about mindfulness, specifically vipassana, but he also talks about something called dzogchen. And I think we need to distinguish these because most people just hear meditation and think it's all just one thing.
Yes, this is a critical technical distinction that he makes. Most people, if they download an app like Headspace or Calm, are going to be doing some version of vipassana. You could call it dualistic mindfulness.
That's the one where you observe the breath.
Yes. The fundamental instruction relies on paying close attention to an object of awareness. Focus on the breath. Focus on the sensation of your feet on the floor. Focus on a sound. The structure is there's a subject, you, who is watching an object, the breath.
So you're standing on the bank of the river, watching the thoughts float by like leaves on the water?
It's an incredibly useful technique. It's great for calming the nervous system. It builds the muscle of concentration. But, Harris argues, it can subtly reinforce the problem. It reinforces the duality. You still feel like the watcher. You still feel like the guy on the bank. You might be a calmer guy on the bank, a more mindful guy, but you're still separate from the river.
Okay, so what's the alternative? What's this dzogchen practice about?
The alternative is a non-dual practice. You can find it in traditions like dzogchen, which is from Tibetan Buddhism, or Advaita Vedanta from Hinduism. The goal here isn't to focus on an object, but to look directly for the subject. The core instruction is simply look for the looker.
That sounds like a riddle. It's a bit of a brain twister.
It is a riddle, but it's an experiential one, not a conceptual one. And he uses a brilliant scientific analogy to point to it. The optical blind spot.
Right, we all have one in each eye.
We all have a literal blind spot in our field of vision where the optic nerve connects to the retina. There are no photoreceptors there.
And you have to do that trick with a dot on a piece of paper to even find it. You close one eye, you stare across, and as you move the paper, the dot just vanishes.
But here's the important question. When the dot vanishes, do you see a black hole in your vision? Do you see a gap?
No. The brain just it fills it in with the surrounding pattern. It looks continuous, like nothing is missing.
Harris argues that we have a cognitive blind spot that works the same way. We have this powerful feeling that there is a self at the center of our consciousness. But if you actually turn your attention around and look for it, It isn't there.
You know what? I think we should actually try this for a moment. Listeners, if you're driving, please keep your eyes on the road, but you can follow along with your attention.
Okay, let's do the experiment. Right now, just look at something in front of you. Your hand, the wall, the microphone.
Okay, I'm looking at my hand.
So clearly, you see the hand. There's an object, the hand, appearing in your vision.
Check.
Got it. Now, in this moment, you have a feeling that you are looking from somewhere. You feel like you're located somewhere behind your eyes, inside your head.
Yes, that's the default feeling. I'm in here, the hand is out there.
Okay. Now, what I want you to do is, very suddenly, turn your attention 180 degrees back on itself. Look for the thing that is looking. Look for your own head. Look back toward where you feel you are looking from.
Okay.
What did you actually see?
Nothing. I mean, there's no thing there.
Did you find a head? Did you see a face?
No. I see a bit of my nose at the bottom, and I can see the room around me. But where my head should be from my own first-person perspective, there's just clear space. There's just the world appearing.
Exactly. The philosopher Douglas Harding called this having no head. From your own direct first-person perspective, you do not have a head. You are simply a capacity for the world to appear. You are the space in which the hand and the room and all these sounds are currently appearing.
It's a very weirdly relieving feeling. For just a split second there, the feeling of me wasn't there. It was just seeing. There was no seer.
That is the diamond. That is the insight. That split second where the subject, you, collapses into the object, the world. And the radical claim of a tradition like Dzogchen is that if you can learn to stabilize that view, if you can learn to live from that headless place, then psychological suffering dissolves.
Why?
Because there's no target for the suffering to hit. An insult needs an I to land on. Anxiety needs a me to be anxious about.
So why does the system persist? If the self is an illusion and dropping it for even a second feels so relieving, why does it reboot so consistently? Why did I snap right back to feeling like me sitting in a chair 2 seconds later?
Two main reasons. The first is proximity. As we said, it's too close to be seen. It's the very medium of your experience, so you don't notice it. It's like a fish trying to see water.
And the second reason?
The gradual trap. Even meditation systems can accidentally reinforce the self. If your attitude is, I'm going to meditate for an hour every day so that I can become a better, more enlightened person in 10 years, who is the I in that sentence?
It's the ego. It's just another project for the self to accomplish.
It's the ultimate spiritual materialism. I'm going to be the most enlightened guy at the dinner party. The ego is trying to add enlightenment to its collection of trophies.
I see.
The insight of Dzogchen is that this freedom isn't a future state you have to achieve. It's a recognition of the present state. You are already headless. You just keep habitually imagining a head is there.
I want to shift gears a little bit to the hard science because, again, Harris is a neuroscientist and he brings some heavy artillery to back all of this up. We absolutely have to talk about the split brain experiments. This is where the system argument becomes almost undeniable.
This is one of the most fascinating and, frankly, most disturbing areas of neuroscience. For anyone who believes in a single, unified, indivisible soul, this research is just devastating.
Okay, let's set the scene properly. This started as a medical procedure, right?
Yes, a radical one. In the mid-20th century, for patients with severe, life-threatening epilepsy, surgeons would sometimes perform a corpus callosotomy.
Which means they cut the corpus callosum.
That's the thick bundle of nerves connecting the left and right hemispheres of the brain. It's the main information superhighway between the two halves. The idea was if you cut it, a seizure couldn't spread from one side to the other.
And it worked for the seizures. But the side effect is that you effectively create 2 independent consciousnesses in one skull.
2 minds in one head. And they can't talk to each other.
Let's slow down and visualize exactly how this experiment works, because the details are what make it so mind-bending. You have a patient, let's call him Joe. Joe's had his corpus callosum cut. He's sitting in a lab, looking at a screen.
The researchers have it set up so they can flash an image to just one half of his visual field at a time. Now the wiring of the brain is crossed. Information from the right visual field goes to the left brain hemisphere. Information from the left visual field goes to the right brain hemisphere.
And crucially, for most right-handed people, the left brain is the side that handles language. It's the speaking part of you. The right brain is mostly mute, but it's very good at visual and spatial tasks.
Correct. So the researchers flash a picture of a chicken claw to Joe's right visual field. That image goes to his speaking left brain. At the same time, they flash a picture of a snowy landscape to his left visual field. That goes to his mute right brain.
Okay, so one half of his brain sees a chicken claw, The other half sees a winter scene. Joe, the person, is not consciously aware of this split.
Then they ask him to point to a related object from a pile of picture cards in front of him using both hands. His right hand, which is controlled by the left brain that saw the chicken, points to a picture of a chicken. Logical.
Makes perfect sense.
But his left hand, which is controlled by the right brain that saw the snow, points to a picture of a shovel. Also perfectly logical. You use a shovel to clear snow.
So his two hands are acting on two completely different sets of information, two different realities. But here is the absolute kicker. The researcher then asks him, Joe, why did you point to the shovel?
Now remember, the speaking part of his brain, the left brain, only saw the chicken claw. It has zero knowledge of the snow. It literally did not see it. So does Joe's left brain say, I have no idea, my left hand just moved on its own? Or, I think the other guy inside my head must have seen something I didn't.
No. Without any hesitation, he answers instantly. He says, oh, that's easy. I saw the chicken claw, and you need a shovel to clean out the chicken coop.
And that is the moment the self dissolves into smoke. That's the smoking gun. The left brain confabulated. It just made up a plausible reason on the spot. It lied to maintain the feeling of being a single, coherent person who is in control. It didn't know the real reason, so it manufactured a story that made sense of the behavior.
That is genuinely terrifying. It implies that the voice in my head, the narrator that's constantly explaining why I do things, might just be a press secretary. A PR guy who's making up press releases for decisions that were already made by parts of my brain he has no access to.
That is exactly what the interpreter module theory, proposed by Michael Gazzaniga, who did these experiments, suggests. The conscious narrating self is often the last to know. It's the press secretary, not the president. Its job is to justify actions after they happen to create the illusion of a continuous rational I.
It proves that the unity of the self is such a fragile construct. I mean, if you can literally slice the self in two with a scalpel, it can't be some kind of indivisible metaphysical soul.
It's a system of integrated information. You break the individual, you break the self. It's a process, not a thing.
And this leads us to the other major thought experiment that Harris uses to hammer this point home, the teleportation paradox. This is originally from the philosopher Derek Parfit, but Harris uses it so effectively.
I love this one. It completely ruins Star Trek for everyone.
It really does.
Yeah.
So imagine a teleporter, just like in Star Trek. You step into a machine on Earth, it scans every single atom of your body, their exact type, location, quantum state, everything.
Then it destroys your body on Earth, vaporizes it. And on Mars, a machine uses that data to build an atom-for-atom perfect replica of you.
This copy has all of your memories, your personality, your scars. It thinks it's you. It remembers stepping into the machine on Earth just a moment ago, and now it's stepping out on Mars.
So the big question is, did you survive the trip? Or did you die on Earth and a perfect clone just took your place?
My immediate gut reaction is, I died. The guy on Mars is an imposter. He's a perfect copy, but he's not me. I, the original stream of consciousness, got vaporized.
But why? He is physically identical in every way. He is psychologically identical. If you believe the self is just the pattern of information, the software, then the pattern arrives safely on Mars. The data transfer was successful.
But the hardware was destroyed. The stream was broken.
Was it? You go to sleep every night, the stream of your consciousness breaks for hours, you enter dreamless sleep. How do you know the you that wakes up in your bed in the morning isn't just a rebooted copy with implanted memories of the day before?
Okay, now you're just giving me an existential crisis. Don't do that.
Laughs. But Harris pushes it one step further to make it even clearer. Imagine the machine on Earth breaks. It scans you, it creates the perfect copy on Mars, but it fails to vaporize you on Earth.
Okay, so now there are two of me. One on Earth, one on Mars.
Right, and they're both fully conscious. They both think they're the original.
Okay.
Now imagine I, the operator, come to the Earth you and say, so sorry, buddy, there was a malfunction. The process is incomplete. We have to kill you now to, balance the books.
I would say, hell no, don't kill me. I'm right here. Talk to the other guy.
Exactly. But if you were willing to get in the teleporter a minute ago, you were willing to be destroyed as long as the copy existed. Why does the existence of that copy on Mars now provide you with zero comfort?
Because I'm still here. My subjective experience is here on Earth.
This reveals that what we really care about isn't psychological continuity. It's not the pattern. We care about the specific physical locus of consciousness. We believe there is a magic portal of identity, a soul, that needs to physically travel from point A to point B. The thought experiment exposes that the soul is a powerful illusion we rely on to make sense of life and death.
It really just rips the cover off how much we rely on this intuitive but probably false idea of a continuous soul to make our lives feel coherent.
But Harris's point, again, is that realizing you are just a pattern is actually liberating. If you aren't a sealed-off capsule of self, you are fundamentally more connected to everything and everyone else in the universe.
Let's bring this down to earth, the present-day implications. Because this isn't just philosophy for stoners or a fun puzzle for neuroscientists. This has huge practical implications for how we think about mental health.
It reframes the entire discourse. We often think of mental health as a project of feeling good or being happy all the time. But a systems thinking approach, like this one, suggests mental health is much more about the half-life of negative emotion.
The half-life, I love that concept, like radioactive waste decaying.
Exactly. When you get angry, does it last 5 minutes or 5 days? A systems approach isn't about never feeling anger. That's impossible. You're a biological organism with an amygdala. You will get angry. You will feel fear. You will feel sadness.
But the real question is, do you add fuel to the fire?
Do you identify with it?
Yeah.
If the default self system is running, a spark of anger lands and you immediately start telling a story. I am right, they are wrong, how dare they do that to me?
Yeah.
You spin the story, you rehearse the arguments in the shower, you add logs to the fire, and the half-life stretches into days, weeks, even years.
Whereas if you have access to a tool like mindfulness or the no self-insight,
You notice the anger, you feel the heat in your chest, the clenching in your jaw as pure sensation, but you don't automatically pick up the story that comes with it.
and without the fuel of that story, the fire of the emotion just burns itself out.
The half-life can drop from days to minutes or even seconds. The anger arises and passes like a weather pattern, and it doesn't leave a residue of resentment.
And the hard data is starting to back this up. Harris cites studies showing that mindfulness meditation literally reduces cortisol. It changes the gray matter density in the brain. This is a hardware upgrade.
It is. It's been shown to thicken the prefrontal cortex, your brain's executive control center, and actually shrink the amygdala, the fear and rage center. You're physically remodeling the architecture of the system to be less reactive and more resilient.
There's also this big tension that runs through the book between scientific materialism and direct experience. This is where we get into the really deep philosophy, the hard problem of consciousness.
This is arguably the biggest mystery left in all of science. We know with almost total certainty that the brain produces the mind. If I damage your brain with a drug or an injury, your mind changes. That link is undeniable. But we have absolutely no idea how a 3-pound lump of gray matter, a collection of neurons and chemicals, generates subjective, felt experience.
The explanatory gap.
Right. I can describe every neuron that fires in your brain when you eat a piece of chocolate. I can map the entire chemical cascade. But nowhere in that third-person objective description is the actual taste of chocolate, the subjective quality, the what-it-is likeness of the experience.
So Harris is a materialist. He believes the mind is what the brain does, but he also thinks consciousness is a kind of miracle.
He's a rationalist who is honest enough to acknowledge that consciousness is the one thing in the entire universe that cannot possibly be an illusion.
Okay, wait, unpack that. He just spent a whole book arguing the self is an illusion, but now you're saying consciousness is undeniably real.
Yes. This is a crucial distinction. Think about it. You can doubt the physical world. Maybe we're in the Matrix. It's possible. You can doubt your own history. Maybe all your memories were implanted 5 minutes ago. You can't disprove it. You can doubt yourself, as we've just shown with the split brain experiments. But you cannot logically doubt that experience itself is happening. Even if you're hallucinating that you're a pink elephant, the experience of the hallucination is real. It is happening.
So it's a spin on Descartes. Not, I think, therefore I am, but...
More like, thinking is happening, therefore consciousness is. Consciousness is the prior fact upon which all other doubts and beliefs are built.
And we are seeing these ideas move into the mainstream with institutional mindfulness. This stuff is moving from the monastery to the laboratory to the boardroom.
It's the complete secularization of contemplative insight. We're finally stripping away the dunghill and scientifically studying the diamond.
You see it in Fortune 500 companies, in professional sports, in therapy, even in the U.S. military, which is, it's a bit ironic, isn't it? Using ancient Buddhist techniques to train more focused snipers.
It is deeply ironic, but it serves as a powerful validation that what were once considered subjective, unverifiable spiritual claims can now be measured as objective data. Neuroscience is finally catching up to 2,500 years of first-person introspection. The lab coat is finally shaking hands with the monk's robe.
Let's bring this all back to our channel's central mission. How does this connect to crisis and perception? How does this fit our core theme of systems-level analysis?
Well, the first and most obvious connection is systems versus individual blame. We are so quick to blame ourselves for being neurotic or anxious or unable to focus. We tell ourselves stories like, I'm just a messy person, I'm broken, I'm lazy.
That voice of the inner critic. Why can't I just be happy like everyone else?
But this analysis shows that unhappiness is a structural inevitability of the default self system. You are thinking without knowing that you're thinking. It's like blaming your computer for running slowly when it has a virus running in the background consuming all the RAM. It's not the computer's fault, it's the code. The neurotic trance is the factory default setting of the human mind. You aren't broken, you're just running outdated software.
That's a very compassionate framing. It takes the moral weight and the shame out of a lot of psychological suffering.
And the second connection is the construction of perception. We've talked about this with other books, how perception is not a passive camera just recording the world, it's an active construction. The self is a ghost variable that the brain inserts into every single equation of experience.
And if you can learn to remove that ghost variable, the output of the equation changes, even if the input from the world stays the same.
The world looks clearer. It's less distorted by the constant filter of your personal fears, desires, and history. You start to see reality more as it is, and less as how it relates to me.
And finally, there's the theme of resistance to challenge. Why is the illusion of the self defended so vigorously? Why do people get so angry or dismissive when you tell them the self is an illusion?
Because the system's primary directive is self-preservation. It assumes that without a self, there would be chaos. The system thinks, if there's no controller who is driving the car, if I stop worrying about my future, I'll just stop going to work and I'll end up homeless on a park bench.
It's a deep-seated fear of the void, fear of annihilation.
But the counterpoint, and the MDMA insight is a chemical proof of this, is that consciousness without a self is actually more lucid, more ethical, and more connected. You don't lose your ability to drive a car or pay your taxes. You just lose the neurotic, suffering-inducing narration about how much you hate traffic and paying your taxes.
So you keep the function, but you lose the friction.
That's a perfect way to put it. You lose the suffering, not the functionality.
So as we get to the conclusion, it feels like this whole analysis is about a series of fundamental reframings. It's about looking at our own operating system in a completely different way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
First, you reframe consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
It is the context, not the content. It is the screen, not the movie that's playing on it.
Second, you reframe identity. You are not the next thought that pops into your head. You are not the voice of the narrator.
You are the space in which that thought appears and then, moments later, vanishes. You are the sky, not the clouds that pass through it.
And finally, you reframe suffering. Suffering needs a center of gravity. It needs an ego, a me, to stick to.
But if you can learn to disperse that center, the suffering has nowhere to land. It becomes just energy, just pure sensation. Pain is still pain. If you break your leg, it will hurt. But it doesn't have to become my terrible pain, which is ruining my life, and this is so unfair.
It's a really powerful shift. It changes the entire game of life from trying to arrange the world to make me happy to realizing that the source of well-being is in the nature of consciousness itself.
That's a great way to summarize it.
So I want to leave our listener with one final thought to mull over, a question that comes out of this analysis. We spend our whole lives listening to that voice in our head. We're conditioned to identify with the speaker. But if you are not the thinker of your thoughts, then who or what is listening to this deep dive right now?
That is the question. And the answer isn't a word, it's an experience.
We'll leave you in the silence that follows that question. The book we've been discussing is Waking Up, A Guide to Spirituality Without Religion by Sam Harris.
And I'd say if you're interested in the practical how-to side of this, read the book for the specific meditation instructions. And the philosophical arguments about teleportation and split brains are worth the price of admission alone.
Absolutely. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind crisis and perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.